In the late summer of 1483, two boys entered the Tower of London, one a king, the other his younger brother. They were seen playing in the courtyard, escorted by guards, still dressed in fine clothes and royal colours. Within months, they vanished without a trace. No public execution, no burial ceremony, no official explanation. More than 5 centuries later, the fate of the princes in the tower remains one of the darkest and most unsettling mysteries in English history. The missing princes were Edward V, aged 12, and his brother, Richard, Duke of York, aged 9. They were the sons of King Edward IV, a powerful ruler of the House of York. Their disappearance would ignite rumours of murder, fuel political propaganda, and stain the reputation of one of England's most controversial kings, Richard III. But was Richard truly a child murderer, or was he himself the victim of a carefully crafted historical smear? To understand the mystery, one must first understand the chaos of 15th century England. The country was emerging from decades of civil war known as the Wars of the Roses, a brutal struggle between the rival houses of York and Lancaster. Power shifted violently, loyalties were fragile, and survival often depended on ruthless decisions. When King Edward IV died suddenly in April 1483, England was left vulnerable. His heir, Edward V, was only 12 years old. According to tradition, the young king would rule under a protector until he came of age. That role fell to Edward's uncle, Richard, Duke of Gloucester, a seasoned military commander and trusted royal relative. At first, Richard appeared loyal. He intercepted the young king on his journey to London, arrested several of the boy's advisors, and escorted Edward V safely to the capital. The actions were justified as necessary for stability. But soon, events took a disturbing turn. The Tower of London was not merely a dungeon, it was also a royal residence. Young kings often stayed there before coronation. Edward V was lodged in the tower in May 1483, awaiting his formal crowning. Soon after, his younger brother Richard was also brought to join him. At this point, the boys were still visible. Chroniclers noted that they were seen playing together, practicing archery, and appearing at windows. Yet, over time, sightings became fewer. Guards restricted access. Silence grew. Then came the shock. In June 1483, Richard made an astonishing announcement. He declared that Edward IV's marriage to Elizabeth Woodville had been invalid due to a prior betrothal. This meant that Edward V and his brother were illegitimate, stripping them of any right to the throne. Soon after, Parliament supported Richard's claim through an act later known as Titulus Regius. On July 6, 1483, Richard was crowned King Richard III. The princes, once heirs to the crown, were now officially declared bastards and quietly removed from public view. They were never seen again.
By late summer 1483, all mentions of the boys ceased. Foreign ambassadors noted rumours of their deaths. One reported that Edward V had met a violent end. Another suggested the children were done away with. Yet there was no announcement, no trial, no funeral. In an age where executions were public spectacles meant to intimidate rivals, this silence was deeply suspicious. England began to whisper. Most blame quickly fell on Richard III. He had the strongest motive. As long as the princes lived, his claim to the throne was insecure. Supporters of the House of York could rally around the rightful king at any moment. Several later accounts accused Richard of ordering the murder. The most famous came from Sir Thomas More, who wrote decades later that the princes were smothered in their beds by Richard's agents and buried secretly beneath a staircase in the tower. However, More was a child at the time and wrote under the Tudor dynasty, Richard's sworn enemies. His work reads more like political propaganda than eyewitness history. Still, the story endured. In 1674, during renovations at the Tower of London, workers uncovered a wooden box containing the skeletons of 2 children beneath a staircase. King Charles II ordered the remains buried in Westminster Abbey, believing them to be the princes. Centuries later, the bones were examined. The analysis confirmed they belonged to two children of roughly the right age, but DNA testing has never been conclusively performed. The remains could belong to any number of medieval children. The mystery deepened. An alternative theory points not to Richard III, but to Henry Tudor, who became Henry VII after defeating Richard at the Battle of Bosworth in 1485. Henry's claim to the throne was weak. The princes, if alive, would have been powerful rivals. If they had survived Richard's reign, Henry would have had every reason to eliminate them quietly after taking power. Suspiciously, once Henry became king, he made no effort to find the princes. Instead, he destroyed Titulus Regius, erased records questioning their legitimacy, and married their sister, Elizabeth of York, uniting the rival houses. If the princes were already dead, Henry benefited enormously. Some historians believe the boys were never killed at all. They may have been secretly smuggled out of the tower to protect them. This theory gained traction due to later pretenders, most notably Perkin Warbeck, who claimed to be Richard, Duke of York. Warbeck convinced several European courts and even Richard III's own sister that he was genuine. Was he an imposter or a survivor? No definitive proof exists either way.
Modern historians have begun reassessing Richard III's reputation. Archaeological discoveries, including the finding of Richard's remains in 2012, revealed a man very different from the twisted villain portrayed by Shakespeare. There is no direct evidence, no order, no confession, no witness, that proves Richard murdered his nephews. All accusations rely on sources written years later under political pressure. Yet, the absence of evidence does not equal innocence. The disappearance of the princes in the tower occurred in an age without forensic science, surveillance, or reliable record keeping. Political motivations shaped history. Victors wrote the narrative. Documents were destroyed or altered. Even today, attempts to re-examine the bones found in Westminster Abbey are blocked out of respect for royal burial sites. The truth may lie beneath stone floors, lost letters, or bones that will never be tested. The princes in the tower are more than a historical puzzle. They are symbols of innocence consumed by power. Their story reflects the brutal reality of medieval politics, where bloodlines were dangerous and childhood offered no protection. Were they murdered by their uncle? Eliminated by a later king? Or did one, or both, survive in secrecy? History offers no final answer. And perhaps that is why the mystery endures, because somewhere between ambition, fear, and silence, two young princes vanished, leaving behind a question that still haunts England's past.